detective. But he moves to Kansas and he gets involved in the Bloody Kansas War, which was a microcosm of what was about to happen with the National Civil War. It was basically pro-slavers versus anti-slavers. He loses an arm in the fighting. So he is sort of a precursor to what happened to many of the Civil War soldiers. It wasn't that unusual to have a missing limb at that time for anybody. Farmers would lose legs all the time. People would lose arms. They had different prosthetics that they used. It was during the Civil War that the technology of prosthetics really advanced because they had so many more people losing limbs that they were providing prosthetic limbs for. They were able to develop them more quickly and efficiently. So I have Adam Quinn wearing the Palmer arm, which is probably the most flexible and usable prosthetic limb at the time. But as the Civil War continued, they would get even better. Having an amputee really isn't unusual. Having someone who is a tracker be a little more so unusual. I felt like those things kind of fit together for him. Probably wouldn't make people look at him twice insofar as the fact that he was missing a limb because it wasn't that unusual. As for Sophie Gates, who is my female journalist, I feel pretty confident that all throughout history, women have always been wanting to do things that they're told they can't do or things that are only for men. I feel like her personality is such that she would be one of those that would try to do something even if she was told it wasn't right for her to do. One of the most famous female reporters is, of course, Nellie Bly, but she comes probably 30, 40 years later. Right now, Sophie is maybe a little bit of a precursor, but I feel pretty confident that there were females who wanted to be journalists and were held back because they could only write about household things and fashion. Nobody wanted to hear what they had to say about war or politics.
Another character in the book who was more typical of era was Constance Lemaine. She's a Southerner who gets involved with spying for the Southern cause, and I was really prepared not to like her. But she had some redeeming characteristics. Will her character evolve as the series continues into the Civil War?
I certainly hope so. That's definitely my intention. Murder at the Capitol is the third book in the series. We've met Constance in 2 previous books. Many people, they've noticed that she's sort of your typical Southern belle in many ways. I'm trying to balance what is typical or so-called typical and what's realistic. She was raised in Alabama on a plantation with slaves being served all her life. There's a reason there's a stereotype for a Southern belle because many of them were raised with privilege, really very sheltered in a way. So when she comes to Washington, D.C., and I'm hoping we're seeing that as we get into this third book and beyond, that her eyes are starting to open and she's seeing things in a different way. I want her to be a strong character. All my females in all of my books are strong characters in their own way. Sometimes they have to find their strength as they evolve or as they have new experiences, and they use what different strengths they have. And they may not be obvious or they may not be the same for each person. My intention is for her to evolve, and I hope that people who have read all 3 books already see some evolution with her.
After reading this book, I'd like to say that the issues the abolitionists were fighting for should not be as relevant as they are still today. Did you include this as part of your natural timeline, or did you sense it in the air and want to bring a highlight to it?
I think it's impossible to write a true historic-based series set during the Civil War without including some of those elements. Interestingly enough, the very first book in this series, Murder at the Lincoln White House, I finished writing a week before the 2016 national election. So that was before a lot of things came to the forefront over the last 3.5 years. We've seen definitely more racial tension, more racial issues. I think it's pretty impossible to write a fact-based historical fiction series during the Civil War without having the racial issues be part of it. It would be impossible to do it. And my hope is that I'm through the story and the very different characters that I'm dealing with. They all have different perspectives. Adam Quinn is an abolitionist. Sophie Gates isn't quite there yet. She understands that slavery's wrong on the surface, but I don't think she understands it to the depths that Adam Quinn does. And of course, George Hilton has a completely different perspective. Mr. Lincoln has a different perspective. The little boy, Brian Mulcahy, has a different perspective. My goal and my hope is that everyone's different point of view, we might see a little bit one of the facets of what people were thinking and experiencing at that time. It's knit into everything that's going on a day-to-day basis, both microly and macroly. Those aren't really words, but Go with me on that. In a macro way and a micro way, from everything from what kind of servants were in the White House. They were not slaves, but they were also blacks, but they were also very light-skinned blacks purposely. Mr. Lincoln's valet that he had brought with him from Illinois was a very dark-skinned young man, and he did not get along with the other servants in the White House because he had dark skin. They didn't take to that. On a micro level, we've got the issue of his valet who shaved him every morning, couldn't keep a job in the White House, and so Mr. Lincoln had to find him a different job somewhere else, but he still would come over every morning to shave him, to obviously the big issue of why the Civil War happened, why the Southern states seceded. So it's knit into everything. That gives it so many layers to deal with. What's happening with Constance and her nanny, what's happening with Dr. Hilton, what's happening with Adam and Sophie, all of that stuff is layered in there.
This isn't the only style of book that you write. You're a multi-genre writer, anywhere from vampire romance to historical mysteries. Which genre speaks to you?
You know, right now, and my love for genre has changed over the years that I've been writing, so you see that in what I'm writing at the time. Right now, my current favorite happens to be historical mystery because I've been a mystery reader all my life. I read Nancy Drew, Trixie Belden, I read The Three Investigators, I read The Boxcar Children, I read every mystery I could get my hands on, Agatha Christie, everything. And I always like a romance in my stories, so I wrote romance for a while, but now I love historical mystery because it's the best of everything. It's history, which I love, it's mystery, which I love, and there's always a romantic element with several of the characters. I'm interested in that, so all of those things mush together. So for me, it's the best of all the worlds. I do like to read and write different things, but right now I probably would say historical mystery is my favorite, although I also write a contemporary murder mystery series that has ghosts in them, and I really enjoy that series as well.
Yes, I was looking forward to reading some of your Gothics. That sounds like it's right up my alley.
I'm a huge fan of Barbara Michaels, Elizabeth Peters, and so this is kind of like my homage to Barbara Michaels / Elizabeth Peters, although my books have sex in them and hers don't. I mean, hers has sex in them, but it's not explicit sex. She shuts the door, implied. If you think about it, especially the Vicki Bliss book and the Millie Peabody books, it's all behind closed doors. So
Right. I just like that ghosty feel with a mystery.
Yes.
On your website, you say that all of your stories are that of partnership. Can you explain this statement?
I think that whether I'm writing a romance or a mystery or a story with fantasy elements or even science fiction elements, what comes through in every single one of them is that no person can get through their conflicts and save the world or find the murderer, get settled in life as much as we can get settled in life without a partner or partners. No man is an island, no woman is an island. We all need complementary people in our lives. In all of my books, there's always a core partnership between two people. Sometimes it's a love story, like a romance between a man and a woman, and they partner together to do whatever while falling in love, which we see all over the place in fiction. In my Stoker and Holmes series, we have two young women who partner together very reluctantly, have to work together. That's their partnership. I have teams. If you look at Lincoln's White House series, even though we have Adam Quinn as the main protagonist, he has a partnership with George Hilton, who is doing all of the forensics work on the bodies. And we have Sophie Gates, who's helping, and we have Constance LeMay and Brian Mulcahy, and they're all partnerships or teams together. So that is the theme that is recurring in all of my books. And the core of that is that when you have a good partnership, the people who work together understand both the strengths and the weaknesses of each other, and they accept them for what they are. They don't expect perfection. They don't always expect to get along, but they understand how to manage those to the way they complement each other and maybe the way they don't complement each other. And that's really what we have to do in life. We have to compromise. We have to find what complements us, find our strength where we can, accept the weakness in others. That's life.
Very, very true. Colleen, are you working on any new books? I'm sure you are.
I am. My next new release is called Sinister Stage. It is the 5th book in my Wicks Hollow series, which is the ghost, romance, and murder series that I mentioned a minute ago. That will be out in early September. There are 5 books in the series. They do not have to be read in order, but it's nice to read them in order. I finished a new book for a brand new series that will be launching a year from this fall. Very very different. It'll actually be written under the name Colleen Cambridge, and it is a murder mystery series set in the 1930s in England. The amateur detective is Agatha Christie's housekeeper. So imagine Agatha Christie meets Downton Abbey, kind of. That won't be out for a year. And then I'm also starting to research and put together a plot idea for Murder at the Smithsonian, which would be the fourth book in the Lincoln's White House series with Adam Quinn and company.
Wow, you're a busy lady.
And such great ideas.
Oh, it's so much fun. That's one of the pleasures of being able to write in different genres and different voices and different feels, because I can come up with a lot of different ideas. People will say things and give me ideas all the time as well. They'll say something in passing and I'll be like, ooh, there's an idea, as it flits away. And I have to focus back on the book I'm supposed to be working on instead of this new beautiful idea that's glittering in the air next to me.
Colleen, can you tell our listeners your website so they can check out more information about you and your books?
ColleenGleason.com, ColleenGleason.com. I can also be found on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram under that name.
Colleen, it's been just wonderful speaking with you. You are a font of really interesting historical information. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a joy to listen to you chat with me, and the questions you asked were so interesting and unusual, and I really appreciated that.
Well, thank you so much. I hope you stay safe and healthy in these trying times, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, and you too.
Murder in the Capitol is the third book in the Lincoln White House mystery series, and I'm sorry I didn't find this earlier and I didn't get to read the first two. It's a very good historical mystery set just before the Civil War. We're just coming into the Civil War in the third book. I think that Colleen did such a great time portraying that time period, portraying the Capitol being built. That was a very interesting side aspect to the book. The feel and atmosphere of Washington, D.C. at the time comes through very strongly. I think she did a wonderful job.
Oh, I totally agree. She included a lot of the key players, ones that we all know, but then she also threw in some characters that were also part of our history, but not so well known. It sparked me into going to look some of these people up and learn more about them. I just love the opportunity to learn something new, especially this time period. I'm very intrigued by it.
I can't say that I'm all that interested in the Civil War period. That did not stop me from really enjoying this book. It was not a long story. It was not a heavy story. It was a good mystery. It was an all-around good light read for a Civil War mystery book.
Absolutely. And what you said about reading the other two, from what I understand, the relationship between Adam Quinn and Sophie Gates is just starting to get going in this book. Apparently in the other two, they were toying around with it, shall we say.
Yes, it's going to be a slow-going romance, I think. It's not a romance book, it's a mystery.
Absolutely.
So this is not the focus of the book. It's kind of a nice backdrop, and it's just part of the character development. As you read the series, you become more acquainted with Adam and Sophie and their friends. You just kind of get to know them. You can see that they make a good couple.
I was so glad that I read this at this particular time. It really made me stop and think about how much we've been through as far as slavery and the abolitionists, and how far we still have to go. Unfortunately, it's sad to have to say that, but it's very true.
That is a very sad commentary on modern life.
It was a very appropriate book for right now.
It sure was. I can't help but compare it to the Will Rees mystery series by Eleanor Coons. Anne did book reports on that series. That was a historical mystery series that took place during the Revolutionary War period. So it's not the same period, similar feel in how the author presents their books. I enjoyed reading both of these series.
The thing that Colleen does that I thought was great her portrayal of Lincoln in the book, of humanizing him, giving him little quirks. And I just thought it was great. She really did her research.
Oh, yeah. From what I understand, the quirks that she gave him were very realistic. From the different things I have read about Lincoln, he was a very indulgent father. He did not like to have any security follow him around. He would walk out into D.C. in the middle of the night without anybody keeping watch over him. So those things were true to life.
A lot of our listeners